Hey guys, my name is Chase. I've recently started playing pro pickleball. I used to play a lot of soccer. I'm a pickleball instructor in the Daytona area. Today we're going to talk about a big mistake I see a lot in pickleball. One thing that happens a lot is people come over from different sports and they think about swings as like this motion here where I'm following through behind me on every shot. For example, most tennis strokes, you end up here. If I'm swinging a baseball bat, I'm going to end up here. But in pickleball, that's not always the case. When we're hitting these basic control shots like dinks, you want to just follow through towards the target the whole way. Today in this video, we're going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of using your wrist in pickleball. Sometimes using your wrist is a good thing, sometimes using your wrist is a bad thing. So we're going to go into some of the specifics upon which time is a good time and which time is a bad time to use your wrist. Okay, so the one basic concept we have to talk about is being in an offensive versus a defensive position in pickleball. So if I'm in an offensive position, I have a little more freedom to do whatever. And if I'm in a defensive position, I have to be a little more stable and disciplined, which typically means less wrist motion. So let's talk about the defensive position first. For the serving team, I hit my serve, the return comes in, let's say my drop is high, and now I have to reset that ball. In that case, when I'm hitting that reset, all I'm trying to do is guide the ball where it's got to go and nothing else. So a lot of times I see people get in midcourt for a reset and they have follow throughs like this or that, but my paddle face is like changing direction. He's hitting the ball pretty hard at me. I don't really know where the ball is going to go if I'm relying on timing this right. Let's say I'm swinging with my wrist here in a defensive position. Well, he's hitting the ball hard at me. If I swing here and hit it there, it's gonna go that way. If my paddle's there, it's gonna go that way, right? So this is where it's important to have a stable wrist, just come under the ball and guide it to where it's gotta go, and that's it. There's no extra follow through here or anything like that. This is a defensive position where there's no wrist. So I'm just gonna come up on the ball, I'm in a defensive position here, I'm not having any wrist follow through. I'm just guiding the ball where it's gotta go. My paddle face is facing the same way throughout my shot. And I'm taking the pace off the ball and bouncing it in the kitchen. So another example of a defensive position in pickleball where we don't want to use our wrist is when we're having to hit defensive liftings. It's the same basic technique as a mid-court reset, and so let's talk about what that looks like. So first, the concept you have to understand is a dead dink versus a push dink. For example, this is a super dead dink. I'm putting him in kind of an offensive position by hitting this dink. So watch how archy this dink is, right? He can do whatever he wants with that ball, right? And now he's sending me off the court in an offensive position. So he doesn't really have to be that stable in that scenario because the ball is like on a golf tee for him and he can do whatever he wants. But me, I'm gonna have to be defensive once he pushes me wide again. So hit that same shot again. Boom, so I'm there. And again, it's the same basic idea of like, I've just got to get under that ball, come up on it with no wrist, because I'm not in a position where I can attack or use top spin or anything like that. And that would be a scenario where we might want to use our wrist, but that's just a time to be stable and defensive and make sure you make the ball bounce it in the kitchen and not try to do too much with it. I see tennis players oftentimes, they come in and this is something they struggle with. In tennis, there's no shot where you just go here to here and that's it. In tennis, there's always like something extra, right? This is not one of those times. So this is a defensive, no wrist shot. Let's hit a couple more here. So I dead dinked to Brian. He push dinks. Boom, I'm stable, I'm coming up on it. Boom, there's nothing there. Boom, I'm being stable. He's keeping me under pressure. Because I'm under pressure, I'm remaining disciplined. I'm remaining disciplined. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about when we're in an offensive position where we have opportunities to use our wrist. So in this case, let's say I'm the receiving team, I return, I get up to the line, and their third shot drop is a little high. In this case, if I'm reaching in and hitting backhand rolls, for example, I'm allowed to use my wrist because I'm in an offensive position and I'm looking to create offense. And this motion is helping me get spin on the ball, which is what we want. And I feel in control, I'm not defensive. I can be a little more creative as opposed to disciplined, as you saw in the defensive examples. Okay, and the same thing goes for like if I'm hitting an overhead, right? I'm gonna follow through there. I feel in complete control, and that extra wrist snap gives me extra power, and I'm in a position where I can control that motion. Boom. I'm up at the line. On that shot, I can wrist over it. So on every single shot there, I was able to use my wrist. The forehand roll is here, the backhand roll is here, and on the final put away, I'm following through, actually breaking my wrist. I would not do that if I was in a defensive position. Okay, so we talked about the defensive lift dink earlier, right? Stable wrist, just guiding the ball where it's gotta go, and that's it. Now let's talk about when you get a ball that's a little more dead or easier to handle, like on a tee for you here. Let's talk about like using the wrist on that. You're in an offensive position here, and you can use your wrist. So let's hit some dinks here. Not every one's gonna be offensive, but if I could come around it, like that's a little more defensive. But like this, I can follow through above this ball and get the top spin here. So what I'm doing is I'm starting with my hand here. My wrist isn't breaking at all, but I'm bringing my wrist up just to get additional top spin to hit a better shot. The top spin brings that ball down, and that's what I want. So as long as I can get it in a good strike zone like that, I can push that dink and be more aggressive with it by having some wrist flick here. These are all aggressive dinks, boom. Boom. Yep. That's a good example of getting balls that you feel like you could be a little more aggressive with, a little more offensive with, and because you're under less pressure, you're not in a defensive position, you have a little more freedom to use your wrist and get that extra top spin. In that case, that's what the wrist is used for. Okay, so we talked about being offensive. You can use your wrist more. It helps in certain scenarios, right? You can help generate top spin if you have this low to high wrist motion. On the putaways, you can follow through like this, right? That gives you extra power. This is offensive scenarios where you can use your wrist. When you're on defense, using your wrist, a lot of times I see it as a bad habit. It can lead to you missing a lot, right? So you have to understand that when you're in a defensive situation, you just want to make the shot. You don't want to try to do too much with it. So defensive scenarios, stable wrist, put the ball where it's got to go. Offensive scenarios, if you have the shot, you can work on like using your wrist and getting a little bit extra spin, extra power in those scenarios. All right, guys, I hope you liked the video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you're in Daytona, hit me up for a lesson. I'll see you next time.